Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our virtual panel discussion on the topic of empowerment. My name is Julie Gordon-White, and today is the third installation in a series of live virtual track sessions for the 2017 IEEE Women in Engineering International Leadership Conference. The entire virtual track will take place every Wednesday, so we branded this series WIE Wednesday, hashtag WIE Wednesday, pronounced WIE. I love that, even though it's hashtag WIE Wednesday. Okay, so tweet, use the hashtag, and we can track it all. And so in order to participate in the Hangout, and we'd love to get all of your questions, use the hashtag. You can use it on Twitter or even in YouTube chat. You can just send your question using the hashtag WIE Wednesday or follow us at WIE ILC. So that's at WIE ILC. That's our Twitter handle. And we'll get in as many questions as we can all through the session. So we'd love to have you participate. So I know that was a lot. Hashtag WIE Wednesday and at WIE ILC. We'll get in your questions. We'll have some fun. We'll get empowered here. So let me tell you who we've got today. We have two rock star panelists. I can't wait to share them and start this conversation. First, I'd love to introduce you to Terri Mead. She's president of Solutions to Projects, LLC. I've got to read this because it's too good to miss any of it, so bear with me here. So Terri's an MBA, a PMP, and spent the last 18 years working in and with biotech, medical device, diagnostic, and digital health companies, advising them on their IT strategy, IT compliance, as they move forward towards commercialization. And her experience includes working with companies such as Pharmacyclics, Coulter Pharmaceuticals, and HealthTel. Now, Terri's also an angel investor, that's so cool, and a VP at Sandhill Angels, and also an advisor to startups on general management and business strategy. Now, here's the really cool thing about Terri, and I know her personally. In her spare time, Terri is a commercially licensed helicopter pilot with experience flying Robinson R-22s and R-44s. She's also a proud mom to two amazing kids, Adam, who's 16, and Rachel, 12 and a half. She's able to do all of this with the support of her other rock star in her life, Zeke, her husband, who stayed home with her kids for nearly 10 years. Now that's empowerment. All right. Now, our other panelist, Jen, I admire. I've known through some different things that we've done together. She is amazing. Please let me introduce you to Jen Tacheff. She's vice president now of partnerships and growth with Women Who Code, right in alignment with what all of you are doing today. So Jen, she drives partnerships and revenue at Women Who Code, helping to create diversity and inclusion programs, pathways to leadership, global marketing, product campaigns, and more. She's vice president of partnerships and growth at Women Who Code, which is an award-winning Y Combinator company helping to propel, wait for it, 80,000 plus women around the world in tech and leadership. Prior to Women Who Code, Jennifer was an executive leader at Girls Inc., something near and dear to my heart, raising over $20 million for the first and only resource center for girls in downtown Oakland, and received a LEAD Fellowship Award for her work as a change agent in the community. Jennifer is a 2016 YBCA Equity Award recipient and has spoken at conferences and summits around the world on leadership, technology, and inclusion. And again, I'm your moderator, Julie Gordon-White. I'm founder of The Well for Women Entrepreneurs. I am a best-selling author, a TEDx speaker, and I'm a featured expert for Google, small business, and also Intuit QuickBooks. Whew, ladies, that's a mouthful, huh? Are you there? Hi, Terri. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Yes. Thank you, Julie. That was amazing.
So awesome. With those bios, I think we're ready to talk about empowerment here. I'm kind of fired up. What about you guys?
Yeah, I feel like a fan to my fellow panelists. I'm super excited.
Right. Girl fan. All right. Let's jump right in. Let's go right to empowerment, because I think it's important that we just establish right out of the gate, what is empowerment to you? That's a word that's just tossed around kind of casually, actually. So Terri, let's start with you. Tell us, what do you think? How do you define empowerment?
Well, I kind of cheated this morning and talked to my 12-year-old daughter. It was like, what do you think empowerment is? So I could get some different perspectives. And I think really the conclusion I came to is it's all about being able to have opportunities and be able to make my own choices and have my own decisions without limits, whether they're external or they're internal. And so when I feel the most empowered is when I have the opportunity to make those decisions and I take those opportunities.
I love it. Fantastic. Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, thanks. So I would say, well, first of all, the word empowerment, women inherently, excuse me, apparently I'm going through puberty right now, are so powerful, right? So it's really about leveraging their power, right? And creating pathways to success therein. So for me, empowerment is mobility, showing up as your whole self, being authentically you, continuing to learn and level up, and course correct. There was something that came up in some of our Twitter polls surrounding failure and how that's the biggest blocker for people and women in general. And you're going to fail, and that's okay. No one is. I imagine that most of the people listening here are probably not neurosurgeons, although maybe there are some. So no one's going to die. Like, it's okay, and you learn from your failures and keep going. So that's what empowerment means to me.
Well, that's great. I love that, because failure is a part of learning and growing, right? If you don't fail, then that means often you're not pushing yourself. I think about failure, just think about learning how to ski. When I learned how to ski when I was 8 years old, if I wasn't falling at least, 5 times on the mountain, I wasn't pushing myself hard enough. So, just got to get yourself back up. And I would say for me around empowerment is about taking accountability, being in control of my life, being accountable for the choices that I make, because yes, there are people who can get in the way, but really only if I let them. I have the ability to make choices that if I get to a roadblock, I get to turn, and I get to turn so I'm staying on the path of my own destiny, my own journey. So empowerment for me is very internal. Yes, there's things on the exterior that impact that, but I'm fortunate because of where I live, where I've grown up. I have the choice to make a different decision. Now, not everybody has a choice to make a different decision, but we all have the opportunity to make even a teeny tiny decision to move towards personal accountability. And in that, I think that's where we can get our empowerment. I really believe it starts within. You have to believe. You have to believe first. So awesome. So, okay. I have to ask this. Why are we still having this question, ladies? Seriously, why are we still having this question? Jen, what do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Well, out the gate, we're still having this question because something like the wage gap, it's real, and it's actually, when we talk about the wage gap, we typically talk about white women, and I would actually offer that, Latino women, for example, are earning 54 cents to the dollar for every white male. So, it's our job and our responsibility to bring everyone up together, and we need to be making the same amount for our work. We women tend to not ask and volunteer our time and undervalue. So for me, that's what's really a big reason why we're having this conversation still.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Terri?
Oh, gosh. I think there's so many different factors, whether it's social, economic, political. And at the same time, we women need to do a better job of supporting each other and establishing ourselves as role models, providing mentorship as we get older so that girls and women see that there are opportunities that are available to them and that they feel like those choices and opportunities are available. We tend to get into our own way, and we need to do a much better job of being fearless, as Jen said. It's really interesting. I was talking to somebody recently who said that boys learn to fail publicly in competitive sports at earlier ages, and we women don't. We women or girls weren't necessarily given that same opportunity. Or what we did is we internalized our failure and externalized our successes. So there are a lot of different things. Recently, I read the book Feminist Fight Club, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's a super easy read. Talks about sexism in the workplace. But what it really talks about is what we women do to limit ourselves and some of the things that we can do to be more fearless, to take more risks, and to really empower ourselves to really be our best possible selves. So once again, it's social, it's economic, it's political, but on the positive note, there's so many little things that we can do to make this better every single day. So I'm still very confident that we can get through this and all be the best possible selves that we can be, and authentically so, to Jen's point.
Yeah, that's important, because I think, I remember, I'm going to date myself now, back in the early 90s before I was an entrepreneur, being in corporate and wearing, the suits with the little bow tie and the white shirt. I mean, just trying to blend, like wearing the man suit, the feminine version of the man suit. And I think it felt authentic in the moment, but not really, not really, because as soon as I had a chance to change, I was wearing something completely different. So we don't have to do those things anymore. So I agree. Authenticity is a really important part of empowerment. You don't have to become somebody else in order to reach parity, if you will. So you need to find a different playing field, and we're going to talk about that. So do we need to bring men into this conversation, or is it just a conversation for us?
Do I get to start on that one?
Please go, yeah.
Absolutely. We can't do this alone. And in order to, the first thing that men can do in order to help us is recognize that there are biases, and recognize that consciously or unconsciously there are biases. We were moving forward. The statistics were showing we were doing better, at least in the Silicon Valley. And recently in a Silicon Valley Business Journal article, I think it was in the fall, it showed that we were slipping back. And there are a lot of people who don't recognize that there are actual biases and think that we are making much ado about nothing. And I absolutely disagree with that. I even have unconscious biases that I have to check myself on when I'm speaking to women or about women, and to bring in the minority piece into the conversation as well. There are assumptions and biases. I'm fortunate to have been born and raised in the Bay Area, so I'm exposed to a lot more than other people from around the world, but even I get myopic and have certain assumptions that I have to check myself on. So we all have to be a part of the solution here in checking our biases and recognizing that we can't put people in little boxes, even though it's easiest to do from a data perspective and an efficiency perspective. So absolutely, men need to be a part of the solution, but we women also need to be a part of the solution and actively support other women.
Yeah, I agree. Jennifer, I bet you have something to say about this.
Well, everything that Terri just said, my cheeks are hurting from smiling. Yes, I check yes to everything you just said. And they're 50% of the population, and change doesn't work, right? If we're just in our gratuitous affirmation circles or echo chambers, essentially, they need to be a part of this. And I love, I'm seeing more men that are rocking the feminist shirts and the future is female and putting that on their Twitter, and you had spoken a little bit about Girls Inc., but what I would say is so many men are interested in this work and in empowering girls and women and supporting. So, we'd table or we'd have an event, and they'd slyly come up, as kind of almost sheepishly, and then they would say something to the effect like, I really want my daughter, I want to support her in engineering, or I really want, my wife has this company and how can I help? And, they're very much a part of the conversation, and that's how change is going to happen, is through all of us pulling each other up. It's rising tide lifts all boats.
I agree. And, we can't forget our sons also. I have a daughter, but I also have two sons.
Yeah.
One who's 15, the other one who's 23. And sometimes this is girl talk here. I'm a little embarrassed about what comes out of their mouths, considering they're my kids, Boys, I think, need to be made aware and be brought into this conversation as early as possible because we raise them into men with these beliefs. So, whether it's equality on the sports field, that's a conversation that we end up in a lot, about are girls equal in athletics and things. And boy, I really go toe to toe with them. But just really bringing them into this conversation about women and about equality and about gender, I think the earlier we can have these conversations, because we think that boys know things, but they don't. They're off in their little world too. So we have to be specific about having the conversation with our sons, with our nephews, our neighbor kids. So as they grow, they have a different awareness, and it just doesn't hit them when they get to the workplace and they wonder why everybody's mad at them because they've made some kind of sexist comment, or they're just clueless about how women navigate in the world and in the workplace. So I believe in starting early as possible. And yes, we've got to include our men and our boys too.
Well, and to that point, the opportunity that we have in that as moms, in terms of teaching our boys to respect girls, respect women, and respect boundaries, respect saying yes, respect saying no. All of those are great, I say, training grounds for conversations that will lead them into being respectful of women and others in general, and also to establish greater parity and equality among not only men and women, but across the board when we're talking about minorities and the LGBTQ community and other oppressed parts of the population. So absolutely bring the boys into the conversation so we can train them early and use various different things, whether it's dating or, all sorts of different things to help educate them on the concept.
Right. I love it.
And Julie, do you mind if I add one more?
No, please.
I would also say, just basically cultivating whole people. So this idea, like gender spectrum and, strength and vulnerability, our boys, there's this term called being vulnerageous, which I love.
Say that again.
Vulnerageous. It's, being courageous in your vulnerability and, teaching boys to embrace their softer side and empathy and compassion. And conversely, teaching our girls that it's not aggressive to be a leader. It's pretty badass. So let's encourage that, and strength is good, so really just developing whole people is what I would also add.
I feel that girl's ink coming out through you. That feel like strong, smart, bold, right? I love it. Yeah. I mean, that's the basis of all empowerment. So, and I have to say, I am in love with that word, vulnerageous.
It's hard to say. It's better to see as a word, right? It's a bit of a marbles in the mouth, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. But I think we should be tweeting with that for sure. That's so awesome. Love that you introduced that. So let's turn a little bit and talk about technology, because we're here with a lot of engineers and people in tech. So from jobs to apps, how has technology helped or hurt women's empowerment? Who wants to speak first on that one? I'll let you guys
Jen gets to.
Okay, I will go. Well, first, that's kind of the bread and butter for women who code. We support 80,000 women in their tech careers. And what I would say is that, first of all, every industry is tech now. It's not as if it just exists over here. So industry is technology. And, there's a lot of energy and momentum around the pipeline. So STEM and, girls and getting them interested in STEM. And that's all incredible work and necessary. And we know that mid-level engineers specifically leave at a rate of about 57% when they're in their mid-career. So they never get to that senior level and executive level. We all know that you can have all this beautiful rhetoric and policy in the world, but if you don't have anyone role modeling for you, you just don't see industry change. So to that end, technology is very important, and we need to, because we all represent the overall population, we need to be shaping the products that we use. We need to be, a part of the conversations. We need to be leading these companies. So it's very, very important. And we know that women make more money essentially when they're software engineers. They make about 23% more than the national average. There's great flexibility, all of this good stuff. With that in mind, I would also say that technology is a tool. It is not, so if you find yourself consistently filling every moment with your phone and or technology, maybe just remember to look up every now and then and connect with your fellow human. I think that's important. I think that's where it can begin to hurt when you're basically not engaging in the life around you and using it as kind of a something to fill gaps. It's really just there to continue to propel you in whatever your work is.
Excellent. I love that comment that industry is tech, right? It's not over there. We all use it every day in every way. It's just what we do now. So not thinking about it as something separate and outside of ourselves. So awesome. Terri, I know you have something to say.
I was just frantically making notes so I wouldn't forget. To play on that, with everything being tech, that's leveled the playing field for females to start up companies. And so it's not exclusively a male or an old boys club anymore. So it's leveled the playing field and making it so that there are more startup opportunities for women so they can take better control of their destinies, as I like to say. At the same time, we continue to see in the tech space, we're continuing to see the bro network, and we're continuing to see bad actors and bad behavior, most recently with it's coming out with the Ubers of the world. It's not pretty, it's not perfect, but the good news is that, and I think 2017 is going to be the year for the women, year for women. We have huge opportunities this year. There's lots of dialogue and there's lots of discussion, and there's lots of discussion in the tech space. And you're seeing major blowback when there's bad behavior, like you are seeing people being anti-Uber and moving towards Lyft. So that's good. The problems are there, but we're at least raising some awareness. And the other thing in terms of, yesterday I just saw an article, I think it was a blog that came out from WIE Combinator that talked about, they interviewed a couple of women in tech to talk about what companies can do or what managers can do to maintain women in tech, because there are a lot of women that leave tech, that leave science because of harassment, sexual harassment and such. So continuing to have the dialogue and raise awareness, I think, is really important, but tech does provide a more level playing field and also provides lots of opportunity and provides opportunity for bad behavior to be exposed very quickly so that we can continue to leverage that information to move the agenda forward. I got a little off track there, but I hope that's okay.
No. I think I was just thinking about technology creating transparency. Because when we have transparency, that's what leads to a level playing field. It's what leads to exposing the bro network. I love that. That's pretty funny. That's the modern version of the good old boys, right? The bro network. So you can't hide. When you have transparency, it's out there. So that's what makes everybody level up, because you cannot hide anymore. The numbers are there. The data is there. Women can see that they only make 79 cents, on every dollar that a man makes, on and on. So that's what I love about, in addition to when we're going to talk about entrepreneurship, we're going to talk about entrepreneurship if I'm involved in this conversation, but it just allows people who normally don't have access to information, women of color, people of color, to have information that not only empowers you, but it keeps you in the know and it keeps other people from hiding things. So that's one thing that I love about technology is transparency. So we had touched on this a little bit ago, and it was about money. Jen, you were talking about money, and recently I did a TEDx talk, and my whole talk was about how for women, that when you know how to make your own money, money gives you choices and choices give you freedom. So I wanted, ladies, what do you think about the role that money plays in empowerment? And Jen, I loved what you said about women who code make more money. There are opportunities in technology for everybody to make money, but then there are some opportunities to make more money. So that's kind of a big question, a big topic, but I want to talk about how does money play a role in empowerment from your perspective? Jen, you want to go?
Sure. Well, so first of all, I recently got to see Gloria Steinem, and I completely geeked out. A, because she's amazing. B, yes. She said that the most revolutionary thing that women can be doing is to talk about money. Because, I was at an event recently, and someone made a comment where her best friends throughout, her entire life, you have all the hard conversations, and yet you don't talk about money. And men are talking about money. They're talking about what they're making and, how they're, making more money and what that promotion looks like. So they're anchored in knowledge, to your point about just having access to the information. So I would encourage just in general that we all talk more about money, that it's okay, even if it's uncomfortable, to lean into that discomfort. And, none of us, well, I don't have it figured out at all, but, the idea that I'm constantly learning, I'm asking my peers, I think to your question or to your statement about money equaling mobility, it's very much the crux of empowerment, I think, in some way, because you're valuing your worth and you're getting paid what you're worth. And in so doing, you're empowered, right? It's kind of this full circle thing.
Amen. Is it okay to say that? I just did.
Yeah.
I just did. Okay. Love it. Talk to me about money.
So, it's really interesting, Jen, what you said about your worth is equal. What your worth is tied directly to money. And that's a really important thing, because it's really hard for women to ask for what they're worth, because and I too do not have it figured out. And I'm constantly trying to be better about this. We underestimate, we figure if we ask for too much and they say no, somehow that's going to reflect badly. So we're often afraid to ask for what we want and to ask for what we deserve. And absolutely, I love what Julie says in terms of money gives you freedom, and encouraging women to get out there, make money, talk about money, make it so that it's not a taboo, make it something that we're not embarrassed by. Julie just interviewed a friend of ours, Lisa, on a podcast that they were talking specifically about money and not being embarrassed about it, and not seeing it as something that was a negative, that if we even considered asking for money or being proud of money, that there was a bad thing around that. I was talking to my yoga teacher yesterday. She went in to go for a raise, and she was like, And I said, next time, call me. I'm going to talk you through it, because you need to ask for what you're worth, because otherwise you leave going, oh my God, I left that on the table. And it's this nasty little spiral that we start to flog ourselves about, devalue ourselves, because we're not asking for what it is that we're worth. And men do. And so if we want to get that gap, narrow that gap, we need to take ownership of that and start asking for what it is that we deserve, and then also recognize that we actually deserve it. That's another key thing that I think that we sometimes deminimize. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. No, it's important. We have to talk about money. I know it was a taboo for a long time, but when you're an entrepreneur, people toss around revenue figures all the time, profit not quite as much, but income. We've got to talk about income. What if you figured out that your cube mate, you're doing the same job and they're making 20% more than you? That's BS. So it's okay to talk about money. I teach my family, my kids, especially my daughter, it's all right. You don't have to be obsessed about money. We don't want to get into a place where, money is not the be all end all, but it sure helps you make a lot of choices and have a little bit more fun. So don't be shy about it, whether, you're an entrepreneur or you work in corporate America or a nonprofit. It's okay to talk about money, because let's get real. Money gives you access. Information is the first step. But you can have information, and if you don't have money, then you don't have the choice to often act on the information that you have. So you got to go for it. And talking about worth, we could have a whole hour on worth in women. And that's why we don't talk about money. It's why we don't ask for money. It's because we have our own limiting beliefs, right? It ties into fear of failure, fear of lots of things. And so until we decide to own our worth, to fully step into our worth, we are not going to make the money that we deserve. So that's the number one work. is on yourself to figure out, to own your worth. That's what leads to empowerment, really.
Can I add, I want to add one more thing on that, if that's okay, Julie. So as an angel investor working with a bunch of startups and female entrepreneurs, when they come and they're doing fundraising, or I'm starting to talk to them, they often completely underestimate how much they could potentially get, and they don't ask for enough money. Now, we do have a problem in terms of access to capital for female founders. The 3 to 7% of VC funding goes towards female founders or female-led startups, largely because over 90% of VCs are men, and we need to do something about that. But what we find is that women do more with less. But if women go out and they say, this is how much I need in order to get to this place, and then put that big place out there, I think we're going to be in a better place in getting them access to more capital to really soar as well.
Yeah. Well, that ties in. Let's talk about entrepreneurship. Ernst & Young did a study as to why women don't scale businesses. And the first reason, there was about 5, but here's 3 that I've really focused on, is 1, they don't think big enough, which usually ties back to worth and empowerment, personal empowerment. The second is that they don't create networks, which ties back to the bro network thing that you were talking about. And then the third is access to capital, because it takes money to grow big. So all of these things lead into how we show up in the world, right? Thinking bigger, asking for relationships, and then asking for money. So how does entrepreneurship then, do you think, play a part in women's empowerment? And that's such a rhetorical question for me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Jennifer, I'm going to toss it to you. What do you think about it?
Are you sure you don't want to kick that off? Because
No,
I feel as though you are the... yes, as far as entrepreneurship and leveling the playing field, again, if you're helping to shape the technology that we use, or you're, leading the companies, not only are you a role model, but you are creating your life. You have more say in the direction of course, your company, but also in the tone you set in your company, the environment, the people that you're bringing in. I mean, there's just a lot of power there. To Terri's point, we need to be investing more in women-run companies specifically. I mean, we know right now, the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs is Black women, and they're receiving, I don't even know, I'm sure it's like 1% or something. I'm just pulling that out. I have no actual data there, but I'm sure in no way matches, the potential. And also, this point around how women, do more with less. Like, we make lemonade out of lemon rind, so invest in us.
Yeah. So Julie, what's the question again? Oh, I can't hear you, Julie. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and make up the question then. The question is, how does entrepreneurship help women with empowerment? And to Jen's point, it means that we have control. It means that we can design it. We can design our businesses, and we can take into account the life that we want and the impact that we want. It goes back to investing in women makes good business sense, because women tend to have more diverse management teams, more diverse staff, which means that they create more diverse products that are better suited for their consumers or their end customers. And then at the same time, what they do by supporting that diversity is they help to move everybody else along with them. It's not just women. So investing in women makes a lot of sense. And you're going to hear that from me over and over and over again. But by doing so, you create your own success. And by creating your own success, you create your own choices. And if we go back to what empowerment means to me, and being empowered means that I have my own opportunities and I have my own choices without external or internal limits. So entrepreneurship, one of the reasons why I started my consulting company 12 years ago is I was laid off from the second biotech in 3 years. And I said, that's it. I want to own my own destiny. I had an opportunity 3 years before, but I wasn't ready for it. But I finally took it. And so I've been successfully consulting for 12 years. And then 3 years ago, decided I needed to do something else. And so I got into angel investing a year and a half ago. And all of these things have led to me having capital so that I can have choices, so that I can have freedom. And that is directly tied to empowerment. So entrepreneurship equals opportunity, which will then lead to empowerment for women. And then, it's just better for society in general. Okay, Julie, we still can't hear you.
Maybe we can ask the Twitter question?
That's exactly what I was thinking. So I'm going to ask the question. You get to answer it, Jen. How has tech helped or hurt women's equality efforts?
Ooh, okay, so good question. So first of all, women have always been in tech, right? The first programmer ever, Ada Lovelace, so it's not as if we're just joining. I think that's a narrative that isn't true. So just to throw that out there. And, in terms of helping or hurting, it definitely has become bro culture a bit, as we know, with all of the things that have happened with Uber and, VCs in general and investment. And that's why, Julie had talked about the importance of community. I mean, Women in Code, for example, we put on 1,700 free events per year. I mean, you can come, if you're in the city, for example, San Francisco, I think we're putting on about 4 per week. And you go and you learn, you level up your skills, but it's also the community that you're building, which is so critical for the sense of belonging, right? This idea that, no, you're relevant and you belong here. And so I think like any industry, it's hurting through exclusion. And our job and our work is really to change that up and make it inclusive, bring in everyone, make sure that, we're speaking to the society, that this industry reflects the society that we live in. So it hurts and helps is essentially what I'm saying.
Yeah, so we've lost Julie, so Jen and I are going to run rogue here for a little bit. So to the point on the sense of community and the sense of belonging, I was listening to 2 different podcasts this morning. One was, I think, Women in Tech, Adela Sporo, I can't even say her name. But one of the things that really hit home is the importance of providing support to other women as we're going through this, because it's often, I know that I'm often the only woman in the room in technical, doing IT strategy and IT compliance, or even on the investing side, I'm often the token female, and it feels very isolating, and I feel very much alone. And so when I listen to these podcasts, or I meet people like you, Jen, or talk with Julie, or attend Julie's symposia, what I'm surrounded with and inspired by are other women who are experiencing things similar to me, so that I am given a boost. And so when I'm having a couple of my down moments, because we go through, some less than stellar moments of self-confidence, it's really inspiring to know that there are others that are out there as part of our tribe and as part of our community, which is why one of my big things is always saying yes to other women. And it's one of the themes that I'm supposed to be weaving into here for other women to do is a lot of men, when asked for a recommendation or a referral or whatever, they just or passing on a resume, they simply say yes. And what women tend to do is they tend to sit back and go, ooh, how's that going to affect my reputation? What's the ripple effect on that? And in order for us to really develop this community and really develop this level of support that really does help to empower us to be our best and most authentic selves, is by saying yes to other women without thinking about it. So it can get a little overwhelming, and it's not saying yes to the bake sale. What it is saying, hey, can you make that recommendation, or can you make that referral? Can you pass this on? Can you take a look at my pitch deck? All of these things. It's just so important for us to say yes and to be that community. And I love what you said earlier, Jen, about the men being a part of the equation, and how we're seeing so many men wearing the feminist shirts and showing up at the rallies and really wanting to be a part of the solution. And I'm raising one of those, and I'm proudly married to one of those, and not making it so that it's exclusively for women. And I specifically say women and not girls, because language matters, and it's really for women. giving that sense of support, belonging, community, and not feeling so isolated, so that when you do have a misstep, you're not feeling like the world is falling.
That's great. Do you mind if I riff a little bit? Because it made me think of something specifically where, I think we have a lot of engineers as well as electrical engineers and CS technologists listening. So I think sometimes there is a tendency to keep your head down and just do good work. And while that is obviously very important, much like when you're giving a presentation, I am such a nerd with statistics, so I'm going to throw another one out there. It is what it is. So we know that 7% of any presentation is just the content. The rest is body cues and the way that you speak and the way that you own your presence, essentially, right? It's the whole Amy Cuddy thing. Amy Cuddy, superwoman stance. So soft skills matter. And I would encourage everyone listening to not just try new skills that will support your career, but speak. Maybe write an article about your work, or in that board meeting, raise your hand. Like, make yourself be seen, because it's not just good work. It's also really owning who you are and being seen, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And it looks like Julie's joined us again. Oh no.
She's still not back. To that point, while we're waiting for Julie to get back, a couple of weeks ago, well, I guess it was back in February, I was reading or listening to Richard Branson's book, Screw It, Let's Do It. And I was at a little bit of a lull in my confidence. And by reading that book, I had a whole bunch of different takeaways. But I think the most important thing for women, and well, for people in general, but he said, playing small does not serve the world. Do not shrink. And I think a lot of us women shrink for fear of failure, for fear of looking bad, for fear of not being successful. So one of the things, Julie talked about it earlier, which was take bigger risks. We need to be more willing to fail and learn from those. To your point, Jen, you talked about learning from your failures, and I think, Julie, you also did too. It's so important, whether it's skiing, to Julie's point, when she was 8, or for anything else. I look back to when I started angel investing and I started bringing in some deals and starting having conversations, and I just cringe at my lack of experience and my lack of knowledge. And what really I need to do is stand up, and this is another one of my themes, and say, look what you didn't know then, but look what you know now, and look at how far you've come in that year and a half. Because that's another thing that we women need to do more of, is we need to acknowledge our achievements. A couple weeks ago, I rented a car. I flew into Toulouse by myself, rented a car, drove to Barcelona for YFN, which is a sister conference to Mobile World Congress, spent a couple of days there, was on a last minute, got onto a diversity panel, was on a pitch panel, and then I drove by myself to Marseille for an innovation conference, and then a couple of days later, I drove back to Toulouse, all by myself. And people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that. It's 2 weeks later, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was so last week. I just did that. I didn't stop, and I haven't stopped to say, wait, that was pretty kick-ass. You speak some French. You are an identical twin who shared a womb, and so you're used to having somebody around all the time, and you did all of this by yourself. And this is huge. Kudos to you. So that's another thing in terms of empowerment, is acknowledging our successes so that we can build upon those, so that when we have those moments where we're like, I'm just not quite sure, we can go, but remember, you've done this, and this. All of these are successful indicators to this. And if you somehow stumble, well, you've still succeeded in all of these, learn from it, and then build on it. So.
No, that's amazing. I would also say, just to add to that, a small comment, at Women Who Code, we have a concept called Applaud Her, hashtag Applaud Her. And so what it is, oftentimes we tend to not champion. It's very easy to champion one another. and yet we tend to recoil or kind of undersell our own achievements, right? And in so doing, you don't allow for you to be essentially a mentor for someone else. You know, they're seeing you be visible, and they want to be like you in some capacity, perhaps. You know, and so it's really about being okay, even if it's uncomfortable, to sing your own praises, right? And you also said something else that was pretty, I think totally resonates. Everyone I know, so I had already told you that I was fangirling both you and Julie. Like you're kind of somebody's, okay? And then the love was returned, which was lovely. But you know, every single person that you meet has some amount of imposter syndrome, right? And yeah, it's so it all can feel uncomfortable and exciting and all of it, but just remember that what am I trying to say here? That we all have imposter syndrome and everybody's just trying to figure it out. So don't let the fear of failure be your enormous blocker. Like, just keep moving forward. You know, mini shifts count. So yeah.
And I'll add one thing before we hit the Q&A, which is to your point, which is really own your badass self. And and maybe that's our new hashtag on there, own your badass self. We all bring special things into this world, and that they're all very different. So I was talking to my yoga instructor yesterday afterwards, and she's like, oh my gosh, I followed you on Facebook and I followed you on this, and you do all of these incredible things. And I said, yeah, but I too have imposter syndrome. I too don't acknowledge my things. And I said, but what you bring to me is you fill my soul when I come to yoga. So what your badass thing that you bring into the world is something I can't do, but at the same time, I can totally appreciate. And so she's like, oh, that gave me the chills. And I said, yeah, we have to own what it is that we bring into this world. So with that, we have a couple of questions. Jen, do you want to pick one?
Sure. I want to go to, if you had to give a girl, so your daughter, niece, neighbor, some rules about life or living an empowered life, what would you tell her?
Get comfortable with failure. Take risks and get comfortable with failure.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Well, I do have a daughter, Maya. She's 10 and amazing. And what I tell her is in the similar vein, in that you are going to fail. And I tend to, it's this whole growth mindset piece, right? Where you complement the effort and not just the outcome. Because if you tried your best and you failed, like, at least you tried your best, right? And you're going to learn from that. So I tend to, and I also focus on all things strong, smart, and bold. So I'm not going to, well, she is beautiful, internally and externally. I'm not just going to always compliment. I think a lot of times, especially for girls, there's a lot of focus on the way that they look versus who they are. And so, I'm all about praising the confidence, for example, or, hey, you showed a lot of really great effort on this, and maybe you can try harder next if this failed or whatever. So, that's what I would say. Not necessarily all things empowerment, but I'm going into like the tactical tips that I say to my daughter.
Yeah. Now, one more thing on top of that.
I can hear Julie, I think.
Am I back?
Oh, yeah.
Yay, you're back.
I think the internet gods didn't want me to say what I wanted to say about entrepreneurship because of all these employed women on this call. So go ahead, Terri. I'll let you finish and then we'll circle back.
Okay. The other thing that I want to say to girls is not everybody's going to like you, and it's okay.
So good.
Yeah. For sure. Well, I'll just throw in, I have a daughter who's a freshman in college, and she wants to be a veterinarian. And so she knows, because having been raised by a mom who's an entrepreneur, that entrepreneurship is the way that she gets to control her own destiny. So while she may work for another vet when she finishes school, she'll own large animal practice because for some reason she's decided she wants to have 5 kids. But she knows that that's a way that she can accomplish all of her goals by being an entrepreneur. So here's one question that I wanted to throw out, which is why I think the internet gods dropped me off the call. But what do you guys think about a side salary? I like to call that a side salary versus a side hustle, but it's more commonly known about as a side hustle, about going back to that making your own money piece of empowerment. I know that we've had some questions here about that on Twitter about, making money on the side. What do you guys think about that?
I can take that. So I think it's very important so again, coming back to this point that women tend to volunteer their time, I completely do this, and I have to keep myself in check because you're good at something and maybe even enjoy it. Perhaps there's this idea that you shouldn't monetize it, and that is completely untrue. And so even though you're wanting to give and support, and you will do that anyway, there's absolutely an opportunity to monetize it, and you should be doing that. So for me, I tend to help friends with their content and their strategy, and I'm this weird resume nerd for some reason. That's a gift and thing that I really like to do. But those little things that you're doing anyway, I think it's very important, kind of coming back to just overall income in general and not volunteering and undervaluing your offering. So.
I love it. Terri, did you want to add? We also have another Twitter question.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is it's a little bit of a generational thing. I just saw a post about millennials and the side hustles and the side jobs. And so I think, growing up, it isn't what we called it, but I was always an opportunist. So any opportunity that I had in order to make a little extra money to get me to, fund whatever habit I had at the time, whether it was travel or now it's investing. So I was raised to monetize very early on, but I don't think a lot of people are. So Julie, you interviewed Lisa in the podcast I was listening to this morning, and one of the things that she talked about is not taking advantage of stay-at-home moms. And she basically said, if I'm getting paid, you should get paid. And so it speaks to what Jen said, which is trying to monetize, don't give too much away. Now, at the same time, I'm going to say one more thing on that. If your side hustle or your side job is really what you're passionate about and you're afraid of taking the leap from an entrepreneurial perspective into doing it differently, set yourself up, put your plan in place so that you have enough savings and cushion and not 100% protected because you need to take that risk. Then take a look at it as not just a side thing if you're passionate about it, and try to find a way to make it so that it is your thing, and you leave the thing that may be helping to fund it, but maybe think about turning that into the thing that you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Excellent. I love it. And I'd love to weave in now a Twitter question, and it's about how can we teach men, specifically fathers, to raise daughters who feel empowered? So Terri, you want to continue on with that?
So how can we teach men? I'm a little spoiled in that my husband, just by being him and being married to me, and there's zero tolerance for lack of support for women and for girls. And there's a difference between girls and women. And it's about not treating the boys differently from the girls and setting different expectations from the boys from the girls. And to Jen's point, using the language, oh, you're so beautiful, but to the boys, oh my gosh, you're so strong and you're so smart. So finding ways to have the men. I also find that when dads spend more time with their daughters, and I think the statistics and research supports this, and that the girls inherently become more confident because they pick up some more of the male traits, stereotypical male traits. There's something in the research, and I can't remember what it was, that just said by spending more time with them, the girls become more confident. By becoming more confident or more empowered. So first thing to do is just say spend more time, and then also watch the language that you use to make sure that it is empowering and it's not sexist.
Like, be careful.
I say that to my son.
I say it too. Jen, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would also say that there are, starting with an understanding that perhaps you don't know everything, which not to say that every father and or man thinks that, but just recognizing your own gaps in understanding, because there's incredible resources out there. So like a Mighty Girl and Girls Inc. and, there's tons of incredible literature. So really delving into the resources that are out there as a father, I think is helpful. And then also role modeling, right? So if you're telling your daughter that she could do anything she wants in the world, and then perhaps are speaking to your wife or women in your life in a way that conflicts with that, they're paying attention to everything that you're doing. And I also would say, just to everyone, so I'm a single mother, and I raised my daughter 100% on my own, and she is incredibly confident. So I'm also a champion for incredible men in your life in general. So we have a great community of people and have cultivated that strategically. And, just bringing great men and great women into your life for your kids, being conscious of the things that you're saying, that your own behavior, that's how you're going to teach them to be empowered. And specifically, it was something about the political climate too. I mean, acknowledging some of what's happening is we talk very candidly, age appropriate, and we have great conversations about it.
I would add just one thing that my husband does is he would take my daughter on a date twice a year.
Oh, nice.
Just the two of them, to teach her how girls should be treated with respect, that she's a good person and valued and should be treated a certain way. So when she gets out in the world, she knows how men, whether it's a personal relationship or a boss, should treat her as a person. So I love that. And especially now with all the topics we're talking about in politics, women need to know how to be treated. And so then they'll know when someone isn't treating them in a way that's appropriate, or if it's inappropriate, because they'll know that a man that they trusted in their life, whether that's their dad or their grandfather, whoever that father is, they've showed them how they deserve to be treated. So ladies, we've got like 3 minutes left. Oh my gosh, we could go on and on and on all day. Maybe the three of us should get together for lunch and keep this conversation going. But for now, I'd love just a quick closing comment, please. Jen, I'll toss it back to you.
Sure. I will take it back to my Girls Inc. days. I would say, everyone out there, be your strongest, smartest, boldest self, and don't apologize for any of that. Own who you are, and build your communities. If you're interested in engineering, come out to a Women in Code event, and build that community of supporters that are going to champion you. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Terri?
Okay, since Jen took be unapologetically you, and I've already said make sure to say yes to other women, my final thoughts are be fearless, and if you can't be fearless, be courageous.
Awesome. I love it. Well, I think I'll just add, don't ask for a seat at the table, just buy your own table. Then you don't have to ask. How's that? All right,
yes.
So
love it.
That's what we've got for today. I hope everybody's enjoyed this conversation. Jen, Terri, thank you for sharing, being so open. There's so much more to discuss about empowerment. We could go on and on. So I'll encourage everybody on the call. Let's continue the conversation today on Twitter. Don't forget, we're using hashtag WIE Wednesday, We Wednesday, and you can find the Twitter handle at WIE ILC. We've got more to talk about, ladies. Empowerment is an ongoing conversation. So let's keep the momentum happening. Yes, it's International Women's Month, but I like what Terri said. It's our year. It's our decade. So let's keep talking. Let's keep moving the ball forward. We've got a lot of work to do and a lot of fun. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. Have a super day, and we'll see you in Twitter. Take care.
Thank you.